Hello and welcome to this short little video where we will take a closer look behind the scenes of how I work on my book about how to write good tests. So let's start. I want to start with showing you what's the status of the current book. So especially for all of the people who already follow my Substack newsletter, this is probably very interesting. Okay, so let's take a closer look. What is the status? You can see here the tool I use for writing the book, which now is Ulysses. I will go into more detail later, which tools I tried so far. And what I'm doing now is working on the order of the chapters. So I reordered a couple of chapters and they are not in the order anymore how I released the newsletters. And I'm also very heavily editing stuff, so removing some parts and adding more details to other parts. Other than that, the first chapter is already almost finished. I'm pretty happy with it. Also, the following chapters are already pretty good, but where I need to do a lot of work is the how to build the perfect test environment chapter, because in this chapter, previously I wrote it using Cypress. And since Playwright released its awesome user interface mode, I decided to rewrite this chapter to use Playwright instead of Cypress. And also this will simplify the setup a lot actually, because Playwright allows us to use async await, for example. Then again, a lot of chapters that are pretty much done, which I want to do a little editing. You can see here there are a couple of to-do comments here and there, but with most of those chapters I'm already quite happy. But as you can see here, this designing effective application tests chapter is still empty. So this is one chapter I have to do completely from the beginning. It's not, and didn't even start it, but that's pretty much the last one, I think. Other than that, for example, the mastering component testing chapter is already almost finished. You can see here, again, a couple of comments here and there, and also I want to clear up some of the code examples and maybe also add some graphics here and there. And then another chapter where I have to do a lot of work still is the unit testing chapter. And then again, the last chapter, and probably the most important chapter, will be the one on how to actually do testing in a test-driven manner. And it's also almost done, but in this chapter I will have to do a lot of editing still and adding more examples and better examples. And also I want to do a video that's accompanying this chapter, but that's probably after the book is released. So much for the status. So I have to work on one or two chapters to basically completely rewrite them, like the building the perfect test environment chapter and the chapter on how to create good and effective application tests. And then I also have to do a lot of editing still. But other than that, I'm already quite happy with how things are. Next, I want to give you a look behind the curtain and show you which tools I'm using for writing the book. So let's start with the tools in which I write the book. And I started it out using a tool called Scrivener. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it actually, but let's stick with Scrivener. And Scrivener is a quite powerful tool. You can see here, this is the latest version of my book, how it was when I still used Scrivener as my main tool for editing and writing the book. And the nice thing is you can structure your book and you can mark stuff if it's like done, and or if you have to do some edits, and you can add notes and all those nice things. But what I didn't like about this tool is that I couldn't use Markdown, for example. And also, I think it was a little bit too much for my taste. So a couple of months, I discovered a tool called Ulysses, which you can see here. And this is the tool that I use now for writing and editing my book. And what I really like about Ulysses is that it is very minimal, so the interface is not that bloated than you saw in Scrivener. And also I can use Markdown, and I love Markdown for writing. The only little thing I don't like about Scrivener, so let's see if I have an example here. Yeah, here. Although it supports code highlighting, it's a little bit strange. So when I do the usual Markdown thing with these 3 backticks, then it opens this code highlighting thing, but then the backticks are gone and the editing experience is a little bit strange. But yeah, that's really a very, very tiny, annoying detail. Other than that, I am really happy with Ulysses right now, because you still can break down your chapters into smaller pieces, which I think is very important when writing a book, because at some point you have so much material that you need an overview of over all the chapters you already wrote, and it is a lot easier if you have smaller pieces, like with code actually. Other tools I use are, for example, ChatGPT, and I can show you a little bit how I use ChatGPT, for example. So here I wrote a small paragraph about, what is it actually about? Yeah, about end-to-end tests and stuff like that. And yeah, I didn't know how to finish that sentence. So I asked ChatGPT, please replace those triple X's with what you think would fit here. And it even rewrote the paragraph, and I think it did a good job at rewriting it, and added some text here. I think I changed it in the end, but at least it helped me to get over my writer's block. And this is, I think, one of the best ways how you can use ChatGPT for writing, is to get over this initial writing block and just get going. And it helps you with writing an outline for whatever you want to write, and it helps you with taking your thoughts you have, or your a couple of keywords, and write good paragraphs of texts. And then mostly I take the text, and then I go to the next tool I use, which typically is Grammarly. And what Grammarly does is that it helps us to rewrite the text and formulate it better. So in this case, it seems like I already did it. So it doesn't say anything about how I can improve it, because it's already quite perfect. But yeah, just for demonstration purposes, I remove this comma, and in this case it doesn't matter. Let's remove another one, and then it will suggest you a comma, for example, but it will also help you with rewording stuff. So in this case, for example, it says, I'm already using bad a couple of times in the text, so I might replace it. But in this case, I don't want to replace it, because I want explicitly to use the word bad. Then I can just ignore it. But for me, as a non-native speaker, it's a great tool to use, because it helps me fixing the grammar here and there and finding better phrases. And speaking of me not being a native speaker, I'm also using DeepL. And with DeepL, I can translate from my mother language, German, like testing is super cool. Yeah, the detection didn't work that great. That's maybe because I'm using the word cool and testing. And yeah, in this case, it's not the best example, I just realized, because the only really German word is ist. But I think you get the idea. Okay, it's funny how much English already is in the German language and I don't even realize it. Okay, so much for the tools. So I switched from Scrivener to Ulysses, which you can see here for writing. I use ChatGPT to get over the writer's block and fix some sentences here and there. I use Grammarly to fix grammar and find better phrases. And I also use DeepL whenever I don't know how to translate something to English. So much for the tools I use. And last but not least, I want to talk about what's next for the book, what you can expect in the upcoming weeks and months. I'm doing this video partly because now I'm in the editing phase and I don't always prioritize writing new chapters because I think now I'm at the point where editing is even more important, and the last complete chapter I will publish via my newsletter is this about application testing. But other than that, I will do a lot of editing, so don't expect a new newsletter every other week like it was the previous months. But yeah, I think in the next weeks you will get a newsletter with the topic of how to write effective application tests. And then, yeah, editing, as I said. And then I think the release, at least of the first version of the first, like, let's say, beta release is not too far away anymore. I hope maybe in the next couple of weeks or at least months, I can release the first version of it, at least to all of my subscribers. And I think only after the release, I will also produce some videos, because I think especially for test-driven development, it's very important to actually show how it works for real, because a lot of people have a hard time imagining how you can do test-driven development. So I will do a couple of videos or a long video where I show where we can build a real application using test-driven development. That's it. I hope you liked this look behind the scenes of how I work on my book, and you read from me soon. See you.